Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Transformers, the show where I, David, talk to somebody who likes Transformers about Transformers. And on this episode, I am very excited because I am joined. He is the Professor. He is my brother in Blokees. It's Mr. Andy B. Andy, welcome to Talking Transformers.
Pleasure to be here. Hiya.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's busy time of year, but yeah, good.
I was going to say we're shooting this, like sounding very bourgeois there. We're recording this alone in our houses in February. The show will probably go live sometime in March. So isn't this supposed to be the quiet month? Like, why are you busy?
I don't know. There's something coming up maybe next month that might just have to ramp up and generally get busy for.
Ah, right. Is that all these toys? This toy business thing?
Yeah, it's just this little thing that we do on the side a little bit every now and then that seems to be really popular.
Yeah, well, I think we would be remiss if we didn't start this show talking a little bit about Toy Fu, because if people who don't know you personally, they might recognize your face from Toy Fu. And for anybody who perhaps is listening to this podcast, because we are obviously an international podcast, for those that might not have been to TFN before, do you want to give people a little bit of background in regards to Toy Fu, what it does, how you got involved with it?
Yeah, sure. So Taifu is one of our charity it was our charity venture, and we basically buy and sell toys at TF Nation, and we just seem to get bigger and bigger every year, and we raise funds for Mary's Meals. So all the profit we make goes to charity. Some of it obviously gets invested in some of the stock we do and that, but any profit straight to charity to feed hungry children around the world. The big line I always love about Mary's Meals is that a lot of students and kids around the world don't go to school because they're hungry, and so therefore they don't get an education. But if you can get them to school to get fed and then they get an education, you kind of like ticking two birds with one stone. And it's just an amazing cause. And it's roughly around about 20 quid will feed a child for a year. So, everything we can make for that goes towards that amazing cause. And it's just amazing to see how people get behind it, and TF Nation themselves get behind it. And, it's a really good cause close to our hearts.
And it's crazy to think that you can do all of that for less than the price of a deluxe toy at retail.
Yeah, well, that's quite a frightening thought now, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that one deluxe can feed a kid for a year. How a weird way to put it.
To be honest, that should be the marketing, couldn't it? We always have a go at you guys, especially Nick. Poor Nick. About the prices that Toy Fu sometimes sell these toys for. How much are you selling that for? Put the price up, you idiot.
Yeah, we often have this conversation about it, and we're all sort of like, we need to make the most money we can, but then we're balancing that out with there's a real cause about making sure people get the toys they want, so they get in the hands of proper collectors and proper people who are going to absolutely love them, and it's kind of a win-win. And when it first started out, I remember a lot of the people telling me the stories around how Nick wanted to get sort of like rare toys in the hands of collectors and make money for charity. It was like a dual-edged sword, and we've kind of kept that. And I would probably say that we're probably one of the best priced, fairest priced things for some of the rarer items you're going to find, and a lot of people snap our hands off with them because of that. But it's win-win. We make money for charity. Someone gets a toy that they're going to covet and love and form part of their collection. So everyone's happy, really.
It is one of the best things about TFN is just, okay, what has Toy Fu got? What are they going to be selling? Like, what is it that I desperately want to buy, but feel I can't because the doors haven't even opened yet? And because it doesn't necessarily fit with a collection. What I like about it is that nothing's off limits. It's not just the modern stuff. It's not just the stuff that came out in the last 10 years. It's not just Generation 1. It is everything. Like I'm right now kicking myself a little bit that I have passed on to Toy Fu, as a matter of fact, so many Armada toys. And I'm like, ooh, there's a few that I wouldn't mind getting back. But then I feel like I'm falling into the Andy Turnbull cycle, which is that he donates stuff to Toy Fu just to then buy it back again. I think the man has skeletons in his closet and there's guilt somewhere that he's trying to pay off somewhere.
It's one of our pet joys, really, is the Turnbull donating and buying it back before the end of the weekend moment, which is it's just wonderful. It does make us all chuckle. That donator's regret he instantly seems to feel is always amazing. It makes us all chuckle.
So how did you get involved with Toy Foo then?
So I started out actually volunteering with you guys at TF Nation, and I did a lot of the sound checking and running the sound desk in the pavilion room, the old one by the swimming pool.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And I'm quite I get bored really easily. That sounds awful, and I don't mean that in a nasty way. But I can't sit around and just chat all day long. It's just not in my makeup. I need to be doing something. So I did that for a long time. And then you guys got an amazing sound team together to do it a little bit more professionally and that side of stuff. And most of my mates were doing Toy Foo. And whenever I wasn't doing the sound desk, I found myself behind the Toy Foo table. And it just kind of like naturally happened that I just sort of like moved over there more. And then, I don't know, what, 5, 6, 7 years later now it is. And yeah, it's just seems to have got bigger and bigger. And I will say now that the big broadcast was both the best and the most awful thing of my life, because of the sales we did at that time, which I'm more than happy to have a chat about, but it was horrendous. But yeah, that was probably when it really tipped into doing a lot of it full time.
I was so stunned by what you guys were able to pull off during the big broadcast, because I thought to myself, oh well, people aren't going to impulse buy. They're comfortable in their house and things like that. They're not going to, and then the numbers started coming in, and it was just like. But you could speak more to the practicality side of it, I guess.
So, giving up the secret to the practicality side of it is we are part time. We all have full time jobs. It's a very rudimentary system, and the system we had in place was that people would email an inbox, and myself, Mr. Kiernan, Tony, and at times Turnbull, we'd pick up an email and put our initial on the email, and then process it. And if we still had the item in stock, we'd change the colour on a spreadsheet so it was out of stock. And then we'd email the person out to say we need the funds. When the funds cleared, we'd then mark it as a different colour. And it was all manually done on a computer. And we thought, we'll get about 40 orders. We'll get about 50. So it started off with me and Andy Kiernan chatting away. Gav was managing the background. Gav Spence managing the software. And we're like, that'd be easy. And an hour in, we were just like, ah! It just got out. It was amazing. It was phenomenal, but we did not anticipate how popular we would be.
And I think that goes to show just the love that the community has, in the UK and around the world, to be honest, with what you guys do and the support that you garner. So I know a little bit about the insane nature of not just setting all this stuff up and going through it. I have been to Nick's house. I have seen the way he lives. It's not healthy.
No. We are, and it's mad because the other thing that's just phenomenal, which is happening more and more, is so I tend to take over a lot of running of the Facebook group and stuff and keep an eye on that. I just take the pressure off Nick because a lot of the stuff's based where he is and stuff. And the amount of people just message us and go, I've got some donations, can I post you them? And it's just like, yeah, that's amazing. And then it ends up being like, I'm kind of running out of space to put these donations now. I'm going to have to think about what we're going to do. And that's the community. That's exactly what you said about how amazing the community is. And it's just, I'm absolutely in awe of it every time it happens, because still none of us believe it. And I'll ring Nick and go, I've had like 3-box donations arrive. I can't believe it. There's like original stuff in here. There's stuff from Power of the Primes. There's some movie toys. It's phenomenal. The value of this is insane, and all that is profit from Mary's Mills because it's donations. And every time I get one, I'm just so touched by the fact that these people want to help and contribute, and that's why this community is so amazing.
There's a couple of instances that I can think of. I remember one at our very first Mini-Con. And Mini-Con, obviously a much smaller show, but still like a decent size. And there was one young lad who was just before we opened, like sort of cornered me, and he was like, I'd like to make a donation to Toy Foo. Am I all right bringing the toys in and giving them to him? And in my cynical brain, I turn around and think to myself, you want access to the dealer room early. No, sorry, mate, you can't get in early. Like, everybody's still setting up. Not only that, but from a health and safety point of view, but that's it. I'm like, but if you want to go get the donation, I'm thinking it's like something he's bought off the shelf or something like that. He doesn't want or something. But if you want to go ahead, go get the donation, whatever it might be. I'm happy to take it in and give it to them. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he disappears off, and I'm standing there, and he comes back, and there is this giant bag, like big shopping bag, and it is full of boxed third-party combiners. And I'm like, there's like thousands of pounds worth here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, look, I tell you what, bugger health and safety. Like, you know, so you have stuff like that, and then specific. I know this definitely happened this year at the big one in August because of what I do at the show. I very rarely get the chance to spend a great deal of time in the dealer hall once the show kicks off. So I'll always do like a pass, especially on a Sunday night as things are winding down. And I remember it might have been you, it might have been Nick, it might have been one of the other guys. I remember turning around saying, oh, like the desk looks very clear, but I can see there's still an awful lot of stuff in the back there. And they were like, yeah, that's all donations. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, okay. Like,
Yeah, and it was one of those crazy moments because we were getting so many, and you're trying to balance out the fact that people come in saying, "Do you have this toy?" It's like, I've seen that in the donations box, but I haven't had time to process it, and we haven't got another one. And it's trying to balance out that nature of, do we just leave that for next year and say no, or do we go, we can find it if you give us 10 minutes? But I try to really, when we talk about the donations thing as well, just call something out that I was absolutely speechless by from one of your guests actually at the last show, Michael Charles Hill. At the end of the show, he came over to us and he just said, "Guys, I've heard about you all weekend. I've heard what you do, and I'm so touched by it. I really want to help out. I've got some scripts left. Do you mind if I sign them and leave them with you to auction off or do whatever you want next year?" And I was just like, he's a guest. You know, he's like we look up to him. He's the people we come here to meet them as well, and he wants to help us. And it's just like, wow, that was, and we were all just like speechless with him. It's like, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. You know, it was insane. It
yeah,
was so good.
it is. But obviously, then the practicality of having to sort through all of these donations and figure all of this out. I mean, as you say, everybody works full time,
Yeah.
but there is literally not enough hours in the day to be able to go ahead and do that.
No, there isn't. And we constantly ping messages backwards and forwards going, what we taking to Mini-Con, what we taking to the real one, what have we got sorted, what's not sorted, what have we got in. It's like, it's just trying to find the time to go through it and not necessarily cherry pick the items, but trying to remember what we've got that we don't need to take more of. So we know we've got duplicates of things. So we want to take the stuff that we haven't got out, and we haven't got the stuff we haven't seen for a while. And, you know, and it's just that constant thought process of what haven't we got that we need out. And yeah, it's tough, but it's actually quite enjoyable. You know, we're all fans of the line. We all love the toys, so getting a box of donations to go through is great fun.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. What's popular in 2024, 2025? Like, what are people like after? Because I suppose that's the good thing with you guys, because it's a spectrum of everything. You probably have more. You've probably got more research data into what's popular than Hasbro does at this point, quite frankly.
Yeah, and this is the weird thing. So the stuff you'd expect to be popular, like the stuff like you mentioned earlier, Armada is really popular at the moment. Armada, Energon, animated has been popular for years, and you know some of this stuff's hard for us to get a hold of ourselves. So the minute it goes on the table, it's gone instantly. A lot of the sort of like Titans Return, Power of the Primes, Combiner Wars is still really popular. I think it's got to that point now where it's long enough from being at retail that some people might have missed it or felt like they've missed out. They've got a bit of FOMO with it, fear of missing out. And there's a lot of that still really, really popular. There's always the original stuff, like the Gen 1, Gen 2 stuff is always really popular. We just never have enough of that for obvious reasons. And then we always have this really weird thing where we always feel, and I think it's our personal opinion, is that the movie toys aren't really popular because, you know, they're a bit of a polarizing figure, shall we say. They're a very diversive thing if you read about them online. But we put some of them out and they fly off the shelf as well. So it's kind of like different age groups buy different things. And the amount of people just come up and go, that's cool, I'll buy that. And there's no, I don't collect that line, I don't collect that meaning. It's just that that's a really cool toy, I want that. And that's really nice as well.
I've started realizing over the last couple of years that the joke of the live action movies, it's not a joke that you can get away with anymore, because that first Michael Bay movie is 18 years old now. That means that if you were a kid who was 5 or 6, the prime age to get into something, you're now an adult, and that is to you what Transformers is now. Like you can make fun of it for however long you want, but the reality is now these people are in exactly the same position that I was when I got back into Transformers.
Yeah, and this is
So
the thing, and it's I always think that we all want the fandom to be a huge success. We all want people to love Transformers the way we do. So whatever was the reason they got into it is a great reason. And more and more people, as you say now, they're starting to maybe get their own disposable income, their first jobs, that kind of thing, from that age range, and suddenly we're seeing a spike in the popularity of those toys. So yeah, it's just a really, really odd eclectic mix. As you say, it's really good fun watching people buying different things. And what's starting to get really frightening is because I recognise faces. I'm really good at recognising faces. I'm starting to know where people are going to go on the table as they approach. That's a terrifying place to be. Because I'm looking at people going, "Well, you're heading to G1." I look at someone else, "You're going to animated," and that is really frightening.
it would be fascinating, I think, for Hasbro to like send like an undercover operative to the show and just like sit at the edge of your table, just like take a note of like, all right, what's going, because as you say, I mean, animated has been popular ever since its debut. And
Yeah,
I think, especially some of those latter day run figures, your blackouts, your repaints of Ultra Magnus, things like that, repaint of Megatron, these ones where they were difficult to get hold of even back in the day,
yeah.
they are like gold dust. And but you did have actually a blackout, I think, at Mini-Con, didn't you?
Yes, I think we did. Yeah, we've been able to pick up a couple of bits and pieces that we've had sort of like some of the more rarer figures recently, and I know that we've got quite a few for this year as well. Without going into too many specifics, but I know there are a few of the rarer Japanese ones floating around our set at the moment, which hopefully should make people quite excited.
Yeah, if you just want to know about rarity, just watch Gav Spencer's YouTube channel,
Yeah.
where it's basically like, I hope you're ticking the box which says, "Is this a paid sponsorship?" Like,
And
um,
that's the other good fun thing about Tofu. Really, genuinely, is the amount of pictures I get of stuff arriving that we've maybe sort of like bought or something on, ready to sell, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Why do we have 4 of them? Because that's really rare. How have we got 4 when I can't find one for myself? And that's the really fun thing.
well, this was it. I mean, I remember when I brought along my collection to Nick and like took it down, and we were going through it, and you sometimes you don't realize what you actually have. This is the old Antiques Roadshow thing. It was sat in a cupboard or whatever it might be. From your point of view, it's in a tub. He pulls out, well, what was it? It was the Tiger Hawk universe repaint. And I forget the name of the character now. And Nick was like, "That's the only one I've ever seen like in person." And I'm like, "How have you? Like, you just don't know, that like." Then I think about it, and I'm like, "Yeah, I bought that on one random trip to America, and I just bought it because it looked cool. That's it." But yeah, so again, Toy Fu, it's doing incredible work, and long may it continue. And I'm very excited, even if it does damage my wallet considerably. Like, what's weird is that I have, you're talking about like FOMO stuff that you pass on. Like, I have an internal list in my head of stuff that I want that I didn't pick up. And I simply refer to it as my toy foo list, where I know that I could go on eBay and I could buy it, but it will cost me 4 times the value that it would cost in the shop. But if I'm just patient enough, one day it will be on the toy foo table. And even though it will be more expensive than it was in the shop, it will still be a darn sight better than what I'm getting. And I get to feel good about myself because and I think that's just the magic of toy foo.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think, all of us that volunteer and work for Typhoon will tell you that it's the biggest blessing and the biggest curse because it cost me a fortune.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like, I've got this list of stuff I've always wanted. Nick, if you see one of these, keep an eye out.
Well, all I'm saying is that if there's an Earthrise double dealer knocking around at some point, just, just saying.
I'll bear you in mind.
So that's Toy Foo, but one of the other things that I want to talk to you about is something that you and I, Andy, we have fallen down a bit of a rabbit hole because you and I have developed a bit of a kindred love for the old Blokees, haven't we?
We have, yes. It's a little bit of a problem addiction, isn't it?
I want to tell this, like, just this story for people. So at TFN this year, we had Blokees there as a vendor. And this guy, I literally had to bat him away several times because we were they were desperately trying to set up, and you and a couple of other guys from Toy Foo, and I will admit myself, we're just lurking the entire time, just waiting, and then we go up and bless the guys that work for Blokees. They had no idea what they were expecting. And we wander up like as this group, just the most unthreatening group you've ever seen in your life. And we're like, all right, okay, yeah, how much for a box? And they're like, oh, it's like £7. We're like, no, we're not talking about those boxes. Like, how much for a crate of this stuff? And they're like, what like a crate? We're like, yeah. Like, we want all of them. And there's only one way to guarantee that we're going to get all of them, and that's to buy a crate. So how much?
It was his response that it was like, do you think a lot of people are doing this? And you and I just went, yep. A lot. Everybody who's a collector will want the whole wave, so they'll buy a box. And he was like, oh, I don't know if I've got enough stock. And then, as you say, by Saturday, it was just all gone. And I remember going to him on a Saturday night and going, did you sell a lot of waves? He goes, I've got a list of people I've got to post them to. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Where did you first come across Blokees?
So they must have had a really good marketing campaign because I found when you'd posted the video of you building them. That's how I found them. So they sent you some, didn't they, before the show to play with?
Yes, they did.
And you built them up, and I was like, my God, they're so realistic to the original stuff, and they're so good and fun. And I think we had a bit of a chat as well before the show, and you'd gone, they're amazing. They're like really, really good. And that was it. I was hooked. I was in. I was done.
It's such a weird thing because, like, I think about them because, like, wherever I look around here, like, you know, like they're just everywhere. Like,
yeah, same.
They have taken over. But I remember seeing them the year prior, and one of the vendors had them there. And I would think it was the first wave, and they'd obviously imported them from China. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's neat. Like, that's a cool little novelty. Because I remember back in the day collecting the SCF minifigures.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And, you know, I never had a problem with Action Masters. And I thought, oh, that's like a neat, novel little thing. But didn't really, and I was going to buy it, but I thought, actually, you know what? I'm not much of a model guy. And let's be honest, it's not like there's going to be any more of these. So what's the point? As soon as I found out that there was like a second wave, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is actually a thing. And then as soon as you get it and you just start messing around with them and realizing that you need no skill whatsoever to build them.
That's true, yeah.
And the fact that they just come with just so much personality and this is the truly beautiful thing about Blokees is that they're cutting deep, man. Like, they really are. Like, it's just a win-win.
Yeah, and the thing that got me about it, I remember building the first box because I obviously, as you said earlier, I bought 4 waves at TFN, so I ended up with a lot to build. And as I was building the first one, I was like, these look like my childhood. They look like I imagine every character. There isn't a flaw on how I imagine this to go. You know, you look at the guns, the weapons, everything about them, and it's like, this is my vision of this character in my head. And it just took me right back there as well. And as I'm building more and more of them, it's like an addiction. It's like I can't stop. I need to get them all built and out, and they look great on the shelves. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, because when I first bought them, I was like, yeah, they're really, really cool. They're going to be fun. That might be a bit of a novelty. It'll wear off, and it just doesn't. It's like, I want to know what they're building next. I really, really love them. They're such good figures.
Yeah, and like I say to people now, that if you want to get into collecting Transformers and things like that, there's no better place to start, because there's been, well, I say there's been 5 waves of the Galaxy line, because one was obviously the Transformers one. Well, incidentally, however, as well, if you want the most complete collection of Transformers 1 figures, you need to buy Blockies.
Yeah,
Like,
you do,
even
yeah.
more than Hasbro. They've got more figures out. But there's been 5 main waves that we've had so far. And so if you want to collect Generation 1 characters, like, well, what's that? Like, there's 9 in a box, so like 47. Now, granted, you've got repaints and stuff, but that's
Yeah,
47 characters, and it's 1 box a quarter. So every year you're getting 36 new figures.
yeah.
The space is dwindling. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, I had to move two shelves worth of stuff elsewhere to make space for them in the prime location. It's it does, but it's weird stuff. Like, it's really well thought through. So the Dinobots, for example, you get the dinosaur version and the normal humanoid robot version, and to me that's just like, all right, fair enough. I don't necessarily desperately need the car versions of everything, but the Dinobots you do, because that's their personality. So it's so well thought through. There's real logic gone behind it, and whoever's designing them, you can tell they're a fan of the original, or the styles of them, because they're just so true. It's unreal.
I was forced to, like, I say forced. What a fun way to be forced into it. But when they did the Chase Optimus Prime, and it's like, oh yes, but no, sorry, I do apologize. It wasn't the Chase Optimus Prime. It was they do the Shining line,
Yeah,
and it was the Shining line of Sideswipe that came with the Rocket Pack, and you're like, well, now I need the Rocket Pack.
yeah.
Or alternatively, they do, the white Optimus Prime Ultra Magnus repaint, but they call it Ultra Magnus DW, and you're like, I know what DW means. It's not David Wallace, it's Dreamwave. I get that reference. Which, incidentally, as well, because they've just announced the second wave of. I was having this chat with Liam from Triple Takeover the other day, because he noticed it, that the second wave of the mini Defenders have got a white Optimus Prime. And again, it's Ultra Magnus DW. And I'm wondering whether or not DW is actually the internal product name for, like, a white Optimus Prime, like at Hasbro. Like, or if it is that they're just pulling so deep that they're like, oh no, yeah, well, canonically, that's where the white Optimus Prime Ultra Magnus came from.
It's a
It's like,
nice mystery to wonder, isn't it? You
it
kind of want to
is.
get in with someone to find out the answers.
I know, I know. What I really appreciate about them, with the Galaxy line as well, talking about the Dinobots, is the fact that they're not keeping you on tenterhooks. When they did the Constructicons, it was like, right, for the next several waves, you are going to get all of the Constructicons.
Yeah,
It's not like one of my biggest arguments that I have, not arguments necessarily, but one of my biggest bones of contention that I have at the minute with the mainline Transformers is that you are sometimes, because it's a catch-all line, you're sometimes forced to make a buying decision not knowing whether or not you're going to that they're going to see that line through to fruition. The example that I always give is that I did not buy the RID and Ultra Magnus HasLab from RID because, with the exception of Scourge, I was like, I don't believe that they will do any more RID. Now, however, they've just announced Skybite 2 years later.
yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe now I did want that RID set, but I can't get it anymore. Possibly maybe a Toy Fu, who knows? But, let's wait and see. I mean, it has to come out first, but
Yeah, I was
but
going to
that's,
say we've got to get it out
yeah,
first.
exactly. I'm thinking, no, surely it must be out because the new HasLab's up for pre. No, that's still 2 years away. But that's the reality. Whereas Blokees are like, no, like, we're going to give you it. You know that every set you're going to get a Dinobot and you're going to get an alt mode of the Dinobot.
And that's similar to the when they did the 86 Studio Series Dinobots and stuff, and it was like, are we getting a swoop? And for about 6 months there was that debate of, are we getting a swoop? We don't know. And then suddenly we are getting a swoop. And it was like that 10 tucks of are we or aren't we? And you just know in the Blockies that every single one, yeah, you're going to get one in each of the boxes, in each of the waves until we've completed the set that we need to complete. And
Yeah,
I like that.
I will put money. I would feel very confident in putting money on the fact that in the next wave of Blockies, and I have no inside information as to whether or not this is true or not, but I guarantee you we're going to get an Insecticon and a Conehead.
Yeah, that's how
Because,
I would go with, yeah.
yeah, because that's what we got in this set. Like, they started 2 new subgroups, and it's like, okay, great. So, yeah, but I mean, they're great. They're so much fun. They've got great customizing potential. I've been saying this for a while that if I had the skill and the ability of somebody who is into 3D printing, if you aren't considering making diorama sets for Blockies or alternatively Action Master partners and vehicles, there's money on the table there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, I agree that I'm not the creative side of the customization. Literally, the spare parts box I've got is huge with the spare parts I get with it. But they're not like some things where you build them and it's like, right, I dare touch that now because it might fall apart if I don't leave that. They do pop on and back off quite nicely, and you can switch them around should you feel that it's necessary. To be honest with you, I just love looking at them, and I'm quite happy to just sit and play with them on the shelf as they are.
Yeah.
It's like the weirdest thing. I never thought I'd enjoy a non-transforming Transformer as much as I do.
Oh, 100%. Like the customization thing is ideal. It's the little things, it's the daft things everybody has seen because this is the thing that everybody does. Oh, I can now pop off Optimus Prime's arm and put Megatron's fusion cannon on because that's like the thing. For me, it was realizing that I could take the back panel off of the Dreamwave Optimus Prime, Ultra Magnus rather, and stick it on Optimus Prime and be like, I finally have my rebirth Optimus Prime back. Or alternatively, and I'm gonna grab this one, and I specifically bought spares of this purely because, and this wasn't me. Somebody else posted this on Twitter and X, and like
that is ace.
it's just like somebody else had the idea, and I was like, yeah, cool. Get a spare Megatron and Ratchet, and there you go. Like that's the fun of Blockies. That's what I say to people is like if you don't want to buy the cases, if you just want to buy the singles, you can do a lot worse than have doubles of figures because you can just mess around with them and play with them and create all sorts of like custom characters and stuff. So are you all in on like all Blockies, or are you just focusing on like the Galaxy line? Or, like, so are you getting the Defenders line? Are you getting the action?
So I've got all the Defenders and all the mainline Galaxy ones. I've dipped into some of the classic class, the larger ones, but they don't feel as nice to me just because I think it's the figures line usually. They're not the figures that I connect with as much as the mainline ones. So I think I'm just looking down and I've got about 4 of the classic ones, and they don't give me as much joy as the other ones that I love. So I'm just a bit like, nah, I might not buy any more of those. But I do really like the little chibi ones though as well. I was surprised at how much I did like those. They're a bit fiddly to put together, but no, I did really like those. So I think I might be going for some more of those as well.
And the fact that we're getting a combining Devastator in that line.
Yeah, that's really tempting, considering Devastator is one of the best combiners.
The Action Edition Megatron absolutely blew me away. It is value for money. I do not know how they did it, because if you look at the Action Edition Prime, which is amazing in itself, and then you look at the Action Edition Megatron, like the value proposition, even though the prices remained exactly the same, it is just insane, the quality. In fact, the reason, like, you can see my Action Edition Optimus Prime is there under the TV. My Megatron is not in this room because my Megatron has replaced any Hasbro Megatron as my default main Megatron in the collection in the other room. Going back to what you were talking about with the classics line there, slightly bigger. I would agree that I wasn't particularly bothered about that line because prior to Transformers 1 coming out, it was basically the line where you would find the movie toys, the live action movie toys. Now, no, again, nothing against them, but it's not something that I'm particularly that bothered about. But when they started doing the Transformers 1 line, I was like, oh my God. And then when they released the Galaxy, and then I go and watch the movie and suddenly realize that, spoiler alert for Transformers 1, if people haven't seen it, but when they get their cogs, they get much bigger. And I was like, this clearly was a thing, because all of the ones that you've released in the smaller scale, bar a couple, are all cogless.
Yeah, and I was quite impressed by that one, but the few, to be honest with you, I really like the look of the RC one in the bigger version, and I did look at a couple of them, and it was always one of those that, yeah, and knowing me, I know what I'm like. I'll probably pick them up at a future TFN because I just know what I'm like. I'll see them in person and go, I want that. That's really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's my curse.
Much like anybody who goes to the toy food table.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love them. Like, I love the speculation that you get of like what's gonna be coming next. Like, I love the playability with them. I love the fun factor. And yeah, like I say, if somebody wants to 3D print an Action Master tank for Megatron, give me that. And the fact that the Defenders like scale so well if you've got your Titan figures.
Yep.
And if you're one of these really horrible people who have enough space to have them in base mode, But yeah, I'm very excited for them, and it's like, because there's a new box out every 3 months.
What's next? What's coming next? And yeah, it's great fun when they arrive. It's one of the few parcels I really look forward to.
Yeah, like they've stolen my heart and they won't let go.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah.
So, right. Well, listen, we're heading into the final stretch of this podcast, and I have a bit of a tradition going here, which is to chat with somebody about something that they like and something that isn't Transformers related, because I think it's always a fun thing to talk to somebody and get to know somebody a little bit better outside of Transformers, because if there's one thing that we very rarely talk about at the Transformers convention, it's actually Transformers. My question to you is, have you managed to avoid the spoilers for the end of Daima yet?
Yes.
You have?
I have.
Then I am going to keep quiet. Because you're a big Dragon Ball fan, aren't you?
I am, yes. I am a big fan.
So I'm curious, because I kind of feel like if I would have mentioned the words Toonami and things like that, it would probably be the same. But where did you become a fan of Dragon Ball then?
So it was on when I got home from school. So, and I think that was Toonami on Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
And there was a double episode when I got home from school, and it was always, I'd get home, sit down and watch it. And in hindsight, when you think back, as much as I still love the show, I did spend 2 months coming home from school and watching the Namek fight where they just powered up for 2 months. And I think, why did I really want to come home that excited every night to see that? But that was the magic of the show, because you wanted to do that.
I've got a couple of years on you, because you were saying you were running home from school. I was running home from college. And I remember being in a position where it was like, cartoons. In the late 90s, it was stuff like Ed, Ed and Eddie and Powerpuff Girls and things like that. And that was kind of a wave of cartoons that I never understood. And that's not to say that the quality wasn't there or anything. It's just that I'd sort of like matured out of it. And then a friend of mine turned around and said, are you watching Dragon Ball Z? And I'm like, no, what's that? He's like, you need to watch it. And ironically, I started watching it after the end of the Frieza saga. And so my first interaction with Dragon Ball was actually the Garlic Jr. saga, of all things.
Right, okay.
And even then, I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Because, when you were of that age, to just see that kind of level of cartoon. And so my first introduction to a Super Saiyan is Trunks and Mecha Frieza.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm like, this is just the best thing in the world. Why does he look like Supersonic? Because I had it backwards, obviously. So, like, what is it about the show that, like, particularly keeps you coming back and made you a fan, do you think?
I think it's just the nature of, and it sounds really daft because in your mind you always know that the good guy should win. But there is an element of genuine peril about Dragon Ball, and I'm trying not to give too many spoilers, but it's not long enough that it shouldn't be an issue. But people do die in it, and it's a kids' cartoon where people do die in it, and it's like it does make things more complex and difficult and genuine peril, especially come Cell Saga. There is real peril floating around, and there's a genuine belief that this is going to end badly for everybody. And I think it's that part of that addiction of, my God, how are they going to do this? How are they going to get over this? How are they going to get around it? And the characters just have such amazing arcs, and they have this massive world built around them. And, you follow Gohan from being a kid all the way through to having a family and stuff. And it's crazy how, I've obviously been watching it for a long time now, but yeah, I think that's the nature of it. Just that whole world that they've built, and the fact that you come to like the characters, and there's genuinely bad people in there who have good hearts, and it's nice, and it's that that feeling, and yeah.
Hoss Toriyama was never afraid to just do massive time jumps.
Yeah.
You got to see, as you say, Gohan's the prime example, isn't he? But Goku is the same. The show starts when Goku is like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And by the time, we get to technically the end of Dragon Ball Z, which is like the last episode, he's what, like 50? Batman's been around for 80 years. He hasn't changed all that much.
No, he hasn't. No. And that's the thing with the Dragon Ball Z. And the other thing about it is that Goku is the hero in the show. But if you really break it down to a lot of what happens, he's not always the one that is the hero. It's everybody else that makes him the hero. And I think there's something quite special in that as well. It's like there is the Z Fighters as a team of the hero, not just Goku, even though as much as they want it to be, he is the leader of that.
Despite the insanity of Dragon Ball, especially, when you get to Super and things like that, and you get to the point where power levels are so ridiculous.
Yeah.
They can do things like a character like, say, Yamcha, for example, who has never been a threat to anybody since Dragon Ball, since Goku was 10 years old. And yet, they're able to do an episode in Super where they all play baseball together. And it's like one of Yamcha's greatest defining moments, this one particular episode. And you're like, oh, like the fact that you can still bring these characters in and do
and give them their moments. Yeah. They are. And there's that amazing bit early on in Super where you're like, well, we know that the Z Fighters are going to be fine because they're always fine no matter how strong the opponent is. And you can tell me that Beerus is this god and da. And then there's that bit with Shenron where Shenron's petrified of Beerus. And it's like, oh, wow, this guy's the real deal. And that bit, and just a little right like that makes you go, the person we've learned to be the most powerful being is frightened of this cat god. So, okay, this is going to be a problem. And it's that depth of character that's amazing.
Going back to what you were saying about, how Shenron was terrified of him, and yet you've got a character like Bulma who is going around smacking him. And it's such a beautiful show. Right. Well, listen, Andy, it has been wonderful chatting with you. I am very, very excited to see what you guys have got in store at Mini-Con and then in August. In case anybody is wanting to track you down on the old social medias, where can people find you these days?
We've got a Facebook for Taifu and Twitter or X or whatever we call it, same as Taifu. If you just search for us, you'll see us. It's got the Typhoon logo on it, and just give us a shout. And we tend to not be able to help with questions like, "Do you have this? Will you bring this to the show?" Honest answer: I'll tell everyone the same that I send in message. We just don't know because we're not finished inventorying, so we might have it. Who knows? But yeah, the best thing to do is to come along, have a look at the table, and then talk to us on the day, and we might have some stuff we can help out with, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time this evening. Say goodbye, Andy.
It's nice to speak to you, Dave, and see you later, everyone.
Bye, all.